Alright, what up team? I bring you guys the last update video before the beginning of the league. I got the POB done and I want to answer some questions and talk about a few things that I learned while spending what was a fucking eternity in Path of Building. Jesus Christ. First and foremost, I got all of the POBs done. This is a step-by-step progression of pretty much everything. It's the same thing for the items and then in the skills as well. All of this should be good to go. Let me know if you find anything. I also completed all of my notes, so all of the campaign is now color-coded. There's a legend up at the top so you know what you're looking at. And then I included a section where I talk about the config. I go over and explain all the different config settings. I show what's been removed, that sort of thing. And then further down the line, I talk about the different issues or the different main parts of the build that I want to talk about, like suffixes, mana, the conditional aspects, tankiness, damage, that sort of thing. And then I also include a section at the bottom where I go over all the different items for the different slots and I kind of give reasonings behind why I choose what I choose and what I think. There's a lot of fucking malarkey in here, okay? And honestly, the reason behind it is because I want to give you my thought process, and rather than simply telling you what to think, I wanted to show you how I arrived at what I think. And hopefully for newer players or less experienced players or people who understand this a little bit less, not the veteran players, this will help you understand the game a bit more and the choices that I made, and ultimately help you make the build kind of however you want it to be. Let's start off with the giant squid in the kitchen, which is the change of Shaper of Storms. So unfortunately, we do lose quite a bit of tankiness by losing Shaper of Winter, but the reality of it is that we would have had to go into chill effect and make this work, and fuck all that. This would have been total AIDS to work with. So this is actually a way better alternative. And Shaper of Storms gives us so much damage. It totally solves damage for the build across the board. And it's fucking amazing that it works the way that it does. Originally, I had assumed that it was a minimum ailment that was calculated after all of your increased ailment effect of lightning ailments. So like if you didn't, after all the increased ailment effect, land a, 25% shock, it would just set the shock to 25. That is not true. It's a base value that occurs before the multiplier. So that's dope. Unfortunately, with the loss of Shaper of Winter, we do lose that 20% DR. So we're not as tanky as I hoped we would be initially. However, this should be plenty to get you through T16s. I mean, this is literally at like T9, T10, T11. So whenever you get Crown of the Immortal and Incandescent Heart, this Fizmax also just doesn't account for Pyro Shock class, which gives you an extra 30% Fizz converted to Ellie. So real quick, if we just want to kind of simulate that, I'm pretty sure it just stacks up. Maybe it doesn't, whatever. It's a fuck ton of Fizz converted to Ellie. So assuming that that's how it works, just set the 70%. This is much more closer to your actual Fizmax. And then you could do something along the lines, and I mentioned this in the notes, you could swap out Determination and take Purity of Elements to get ailment immunity early on and help with your suffix problems if that is something you need to do. But yeah, anyways, we're not as tanky as I wanted to be. This is still plenty. You still have 400 ES regen. You still have 1200 ES leech very early on in maps. Again, this is like in yellows. So this should be plenty to get you through to the later stages of the game where you can actually get much more tankier. Speaking of all that, I wanted to address a few things about the build. It does kind of suck about Elementalist, but ultimately it's not that big of a deal. So first and foremost, we have addressing conditional aspects of the build. There are a lot of conditionals of the Elementalist that do kind of suck, i.e. Golems. Bastion of the Elements is another one that sucks balls. So it's just kind of how it is. And then also all of our Fizz damage reduction, like the Fizz conversion to Ellie that I just showed you, that is all conditional, provided you hit the target first. I have yet to experience a moment where I haven't dealt damage to a target first. It's pretty rare. All I can think of is like the people that shoot you off screen. They're gonna fuck you up. You will die to those because if you take off D-turn, because yeah, you have no way of actually reaching them. That's also why I incorporated Flame Dash, by the way, because a lot of times you won't have Frostblink when you need it if you're just trying to be super zoomy. So that's where Flame Dash comes in. And with Flame Dash, that does mitigate that a lot. So for the most part, you will have the conditional LE to Fizz conversion up mostly all the time. With Golems, I know a lot of people talk about how Golems die a lot, but you have to remember you are converting on the mob. So you hit them with Ignite and Shock, it's going to convert 55% of their Fizz damage to Fire and 15% of their Fizz damage to Lightning, which affects your Golems, and all of your Golems are elemental damage immune from Elemancer. I'm sorry, from Legion of the Primordial. So your Golems will be fine. And even in later maps, you'll lose Power Shot class eventually because this is just like a really cheap, unique early on that gives you some solid defense. You'll still have 40% Fizz conversion. Another thing I wanted to talk about was the tankiness of the build and kind of go through where we get a lot of it. A lot of it comes from Incandescent Heart, which converts 25% of LA damage from hits to Chaos, which just deletes it, which is really nice. We also have just a ton of armor and ES early on, which is really helpful. Of course, you have Shaper of Flames plus Prior Shot class to help deal with Fizz mitigation, and then we have Bastion of Elements, Golem, Stone Golem gives you regen on top of increased defenses. Eventually we'll get Aegis, and it'll get like 800. I think early on it'll be like 800 ES on block or something like that. Once you get Mage, it'll be like 1200 because you have a bunch of armor. But then on top of that, we'll take an Endurance Charge, Ralakesh eventually, and then we will also be getting Flesh and Stone, because Flesh and Stone is really, really nice to have. In combination, you will be very, very tanky. You're not going to be like some crazy fucking doing Rogue Exiles or something. We will have block. You will be block capped through Glancing Blows. I think this equates to like 26%, 27% damage reduction on average or something like that. You also take Divine Shield to get a little bit extra recovery there. So overall, like I said, there's a ton of tank layers in this. You're not going to be God tank, okay? You're not going to walk into Rogue Exile or something like that. But for like T17s or whatever, yeah, you'll be fucking fine. You'll be able to do Ubers on this. You'll be A-okay. The last thing I'll mention in regard to tankiness is that way later down the line, this is with the Mage Blade, so take it with a grain of salt. You'll be able to take a Melding of Flesh and you'll be able to get 90 all res, and then what you can do is you can grab a Lightning Coil or a Cloak of Flame to convert with Shaper of Flames either 80 or 90% of your fizz damage to Ellie, and then you will be ultra giga tanky. Again, this is way down the line, but it is an option there, and I'll probably do that somewhere later in the league. In regards to damage, one of the things I wanted to mention was the change that I made in the POBs, which is with Ashes of Stars. This is way later down the line. Of course, don't worry about it. It's not going to be an early league. It's definitely not going to be a league start item, that's for sure. But because of 65% shock, I think Ashes of the Stars becomes like our best in slot because of the 30% quality that we get from it. The 30% quality from this equates to like 78% more damage on Lightning Conduit, which is absurd. And this is also why, by the way, I'm going to talk about Lightning Conduit of the Heavens. This is kind of why Lightning Conduit of the Heavens sucks ass. I tried it, and there's a few problems with Lightning Conduit of the Heavens that I really didn't like. So first and foremost, you have to understand scaling shock is pretty much where all of our damage comes from. That 65% shock with regular Lightning Conduit, with in the late game Ash of the Stars, of course, that is where we get the huge multiplier to our damage that gets us to, again, the 40 millions, you know, the hundreds of millions, that sort of thing, if that's where you want to go. Losing that is really rough. Another problem of Lightning Conduit of the Heavens is that it only hits up to 16 enemies. This fucking hit cap feels terrible. And when you have a lot of enemies on the screen, it's extremely noticeable and it's not very fun. Another thing is that it has a slower cast time, which sucks ass. And then on top of that, it has a much higher mana cost than Lightning Conduit. So once you combine all this shit, it's just like, why? The only thing that it has going over Lightning Conduit is that it's not a 2-button build. You can just press it. But honestly, Orb of Storms has such a fast cast time. Orb of Storms Lightning Conduit is really not that bad. It's really A-okay, and I don't have a problem with it, especially if you get like a Berek's Respite, which I'm going to show here in a second. So unfortunately, it's going to be really hard to incorporate into the build, but I swear to God, I will get it done. Berek's Respite gives you insane clear because it causes infinite chaining of shock and Lightning Conduit, and it's fucking badass. And you'll see it here when I do this expedition. I already blew them up. This build sucks balls right now. This is literally just like a random character thrown together that is absolutely horrendous. It's not even like res cap or anything like that. I just wanted to show off like what Berek's Respite actually looks like, and if we can get that into the build, which I'm going to do my damnedest to do, I honestly don't know if it's going to be possible, but it will give you so much clear, and it's actually dope. The last thing I wanted to touch base on is Orb of Storms. Someone asked why I used it. I did respond to them, but I want to give a general reason why. People don't understand how much damage Orb of Storms actually does, and I'm honestly one of them, okay? But here's the deal. Orb of Storms cast every single time you cast Lightning Conduit, so that's on your spell echoes, everything. It just is constantly hitting and dealing single target damage. The other thing is it has instant damage deployment. Like the second you press the button, and it's a pretty quick cast time, it's just shitting on everything in range, which is really nice, and it goes pretty far, especially with chain support. Again, I have no idea how much damage this actually does, but I know it's not nothing, and I know it is at least significant. Like maybe if it's only 8-10%, it's not nothing. Also, with the change of Shaper of Storms, we no longer need to have overcharge, so you can just add Awaken, add lightning damage. Obviously, later in the game, added lightning damage is totally fine. Just add something that gives it damage, so again, it's just more single target. Why the fuck not? Also, brands are lame as fuck.